carry on with Disability History Month and our mini documentary series Living With, we have Nick discussing his dyslexia. He does have some really useful hints and tips if you also suffer with this, so I hope you have a good listen.
I'm Nick and I've got dyslexia. I've been diagnosed with it since first school, 40 odd years ago. I think it's very common. I think there's a lot of people who don't know they've got it, but I think it is very common. I think it has a huge effect. It almost defines me in many ways. Obviously from the sort of reading and writing, you come up with lots of coping mechanisms to overcome that and almost make it invisible. But it affects you in your social interactions, how you are with people. I can be socially awkward sometimes, perhaps. I think it can be massively influential over your character, your abilities, everything, beyond what most people believe dyslexia is. I think the biggest coping mechanism would be technology for me. I think I'd be stuffed without technology. The ability to have things like text-to-speech for documents on a computer. I can read, but I don't absorb the text when I'm reading it. Whereas if it's read to me digitally, then I can actually listen to the text and absorb that information far better. So if at university, if they give me text that's in a book form, I almost don't even bother reading it. It's not worth my time to try and read it and try and absorb it. It won't work. I think it's probably a mixture, depending on the circumstances, depending on the topic. Normally, traditionally, probably being more visual, because I can relate to that more, I can understand what they're trying to get across. But I think almost 50-50 and actually having it read to you as well to process what you've visualised and then think, oh right, yeah, I get that, move on. But sometimes it takes time, even if it has been read to you, you've heard it, you've understood it, but you perhaps haven't committed it to your memory until you go over it a couple of times and then process it in terms of actually doing something with it, then it's in your memory. So it takes me longer to learn something, to be there properly. I think workplaces, depending on the organisation, they can still be very backward and perhaps not fully understand dyslexia. I've been told you need to go to night school or evening classes to learn your way out of being dyslexic. Well, you can't do that. It is what it is. Yes, you can learn and become more efficient at coping mechanisms, but you can't change what it is. I think in terms of coping mechanisms and support, certainly the university's been very good, or rather the government, I suppose, in terms of giving you access to funds, and then within university, extra time for exams or the ability to have exams on a computer so you can use text-to-speech, so that you're not panicking about trying to understand the question before you've even thought about answering it. There is an awful lot of support. I think you have to be proactive in getting it. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing in some ways, but you have to be proactive and you have to go out there and find it, but there is a lot of support there. I think it would be the same for everybody. I think it's just making or taking into account perhaps that if they're going to give you a book to read or something to read, that actually it might take you a bit longer to do it, or your maths might be crap. I understand things like, I can work out a percentage of something, but I'm not going to be able to do it on the fly. I'm not going to be able to figure it out quickly on the spot. Card games, I'm rubbish at card games because it's all about maths quite often. So I think it's just having that awareness or that consideration. Not different treatment, because you're not, I know people used to call it special education. I think that's probably a poor term. I don't think you're special, I don't think you're, I don't think you're a unique person. Everybody's unique, but I think you learn differently, you've got different functions. Yeah, I'd say it does. If I'm reading a sentence, be it on a page of a book or on a computer, I can't read from the first word to the last word in one hit. You'll read a few words and you'll go back, and then you'll read a few more and you'll go back, and then you'll start again. Almost, you're doing it, but you don't know why you're doing it. I think it's that understanding what you're reading, and that's why it then becomes so difficult or time-consuming, or the effort involved in reading something, you get distracted and not learn what you've read. I do get that. I know you can Google how a text looks to somebody with dyslexia, and I think it's not so much how it visually looks, it's how the struggles in reading it that make that realistic. There's a huge selection of different softwares, and it's dependent on what works for one person. I use things like Zotero for doing referencing, because it helps you with the structure of all of the bibliography at the end and all the full stops and commas and stuff like that. So Zotero is a no-brainer. I'll use things like ClaraRead or Read and Write, I think it is, which are text-to-speech software. So if I've written an assignment or written a paragraph, I miss the commas or the long sentences or the theirs and theirs. So having that ability to have it read back to you, think, oh yeah, why did I put that? So it's the really simple, so somebody who's not dyslexic, they won't perhaps appreciate how such a simple thing can be so effective. So yeah, things like ClaraRead is brilliant. I'm always going on about ClaraRead. Other things like I use a note-taking app on the iPad called Notability. And I'll put all of the slides in, assuming the lecturers have given us the slides beforehand. And then I record the audio alongside the slides. And then as and when I touch the slides and make notes, that's then linked to the audio of the lecture. So when you come to do the revision, you can touch the notes you've written and then hear what the lecturer is saying. So again, you don't have to worry about writing all the notes because you're not then listening to the lecturer. You can just touch the slides and hear the audio straight away, which is far more effective or efficient than listening to an entire 2-hour lecture. So those are some of the things I use. I've used the scan pen, I can't remember what it's called now, where you can scan a hard textbook and then it reads it to you. They've got their place, they work, they're not perfect, they're not as good as digital. I haven't used it a great amount, I probably wouldn't have bought it because they're quite expensive, but the university supplied it. So I have used it, but they're not as good. Again, it might work for some people.
Thanks, Nick, for sharing that with us. I really hope you found some of those tools helpful. If you do suffer with dyslexia, there is lots of support available for you. If you want to find out what the campaign is doing or get involved with any of our future activities, please send me an email at disabilitiescampaign@bournemouth.ac.uk or check out our SUBU page for more information.